Okay, so let's just locate the dantian. So thumb in the navel, fingers just underneath it. There was a stony silence. We want to feel the still mind being like attention. It's a real sort of heavy presence, which brings a contraction, albeit subtle, to the part of the body that it comes to. Okay, and now let's just contracting the belly. Just it can be as gentle as you like. So just a sense of drawing in as the hands clench a little bit, and then just a release. So the dantian tightens and draws towards the back, towards the spine. And then it relaxes and it's pushed forwards by the back. And then it's pulled in by the belly. And out. So it's moving backwards and forwards, as well as opening and closing. And then just alternating. So one hand is pulling in and the other one is pushing out. So this will produce a twist or a turn. And just allow it to turn the head. So the eyes are sweeping the ground in front of you. So when the eyes lock onto things, they will tend to inhibit turning. So here I want to encourage turning. And so for that, I just unfocus the eyes and just let the head go with the action. Yeah, so what I want to feel is that the still, stable center is neither still nor stable. So like in the Tao Te Ching, where it talks about the cartwheel. So the center of the cartwheel, you know, where the axle goes, that's the sort of the center, but it's just a hole. And so it's an emptiness rather than a stability or a stillness. So we just want to feel that this center is just oscillating side to side all the time. Okay, and now let's just bring it back to the Dan Chen. Okay, so now let's just try a little bit with the stick. So just feel how the mind can remain in the dantian at the same time that your attention comes up to the ends of the stick, to the hands. Just tipping. And then let's just try some, just pushing up. So pushing the stick up. And then just allowing it down behind the neck, trying to keep the spine straight. And then up again, and then letting it down in front. And then up and down. And still try and alternate between the back and the belly, depending upon whether you're pushing up or pulling down. So this is my back, and then this is my belly. Back and belly. And then let's just try a few, just the one where we just open the shoulders. Good. And then just a few pulling and pushing. So just pulling the hands away from each other whilst gripping the stick. And this can be really, really light, almost like It's just in the mind. And then just pushing. And pulling. So we're just creating just a little bit of tension, which we can sort of direct. So I can feel this pulling between my hands. And I'd like to be able to just take that up into the skull and just encourage my skull to sort of expand. And then when I push, it's like the skull sort of deflates and contracts. And I can send it anywhere, so I can direct it into my tailbone. So I can pull and just with a little bit of internal wriggling. So it's not just the mind. So the intending mind is quite physical. So I sort of just edge it, inch it down into my tailbone. And then just pushing. And it's just a different quality of tension when you push than when you pull. And you can twist the stick as well like that to get tension as well. And then into the heart, so I can really, it's really stretching my chest. And then just pushing. So to start with, the Tai Chi, it's all about relaxation because we need to get some base, some relaxed base. But then it basically, it's all about tension really. But just sort of elastic, dynamic tension that we can direct with our mind. Okay, now let's just bring it back to the Dan Chen. Yeah, so the pulling and pushing exercise, it will just get the energy sort of shifting around the body. And so we just want to feel the still center, the stony stillness, which is, it's always very detached, mineral. It's not living. Okay, so now let's stand up. Just a little bit of figure of eighting around the feet. So what we want this exercise to do is really define the limit of my territory on the ground. So really drive me into the outside edge. So I'm basically trying to get as far in this direction as possible without falling that way, so that I really feel that line from my heel around the outside edge through the toes. So here I really have to turn here to make sure I hit the heel first, and then slowly go around the outside edge and then into this heel. So if we don't turn enough, you just end up pushing from outside edge to outside edge, and then you miss the trace. So we just want to, like we're drawing a line on the floor with a pencil. And again, just let the head go with it. So we just have to really train ourselves to really relish turning mode and just be very suspicious when there's no turning. So I have to really feel the heel, like the claw of the heel, and then I can scrape around the outside edge. So I claw in and then around. And again, the Dan Chen needs to be drawn in so that the Min Meng is squeezing back, because that will help you get into the heel and underneath naturally, instead of having to really sort of struggle with the turn. So it feels a bit like we're trying to sharpen the edge of the foot, sharpen the outside edge so that it can really cut into the ground. So it really digs down here. Yeah, so the foot, the feet and the hands are quite amazing things, really, because of the way they're shaped. So they have an outside edge and an inside. And so the more I can actually sink down the outside edge, the more the inside will draw the energy up. It's like a miracle. The more weight I can, as long as it doesn't collapse my foot and make me flat-footed, the more weight that can bear down like this, the more the foot actually draws energy up from the ground and into the Dan Chen. I have to keep my big toe pressing down. So we're just, in a sense, we're just strengthening the arches of the feet. Because it's the arch lifting from the ground. That's like a suction cap, it sucks from the ground. So I just want to feel that. The more weight I can bear down here, the more this sucks up. Because again, that's very much the Danshen as well. The Danshen is drawing into itself all the time. Yeah, so without an awareness of what's there, potentially, it just won't really work. Yeah, so I'm sinking into this outside edge, feeling this draw, but is it just a natural draw, or is it because I've got a tightening Danshen? We never know. Yeah. So the more we can open up and become aware of different layers and different facets, the more we just become involved. Yeah, not just in an awareness way, in an aware way, but in a physical working way. Yeah, so again, it's like the difference between awareness and consciousness. Yeah, so awareness, so when you're aware, it improves your relationship with the world. Consciousness just brings everything into you. Yeah, so that there's now a subject that is conscious of this world, and that sort of consciousness, it's always self-conscious, and it tends to inhibit your actual working. It reduces your effectiveness. So you just you mess it up by getting anxious or whatever. So let's just bring it to riding horse and just feel the feet. The feet, they're like caves. You've got the outside edge, which is like the rocky bit, and then the opening and the hollow bit is the inside, the arch that's drawing from the ground. It'd be the same when you put your hands on things, especially when you put your hands on a person. Yeah, you can rest your hand on them and you can feel this edge, the little finger edge, sort of just melting into them at the same time that the lagun and this part, the palm, is just sucking from them, is drawing energy. So there's always this, potentially, there's always two-way traffic down the limbs. Okay, now let's just breathe it. So this is just really just to get the spine flexing so that the Min Meng loses its reluctance to move backwards. And just keeping that feeling in the feet. It's a real riding horse. Imagine this horse is pretty beefy. So it's just the principle of roundness, really. I mean, it's a beautiful principle because it's like a round exterior with like a hollow interior. Just as we do this, just feel the feet on the ground. So as we draw in, this sort of widens, and it's as though the feet are sort of pulling towards each other. And then this bit The knees will tend to come in a little bit. You'll tend to fall onto the inside a little bit. And it's as though the feet are pushing away from each other. Yeah. So you can just concentrate on don't actually pull and push. Just feel as you open up, you're doing this, yeah, with the feet. And then as you close down, the feet are doing this. So basically the feet are just doing exactly what the hands are doing. We'd like it to be the other way around, really, that the hands are doing exactly what the feet are doing. So it should really be in the feet first. Yeah, so this is peering out of the cave. And then this is producing the cave. This is really retreating to the back of the cave. Okay, and now let's go back to just a still riding horse. And now just feeling the heels, yeah? So we just want a feeling that we're never still. What appears to be stillness in this posture is really just a falling backwards with the body that is balanced by reaching forwards with the mind. And again, it's the cave. It's like the back of the cave moves that way, and that encourages the arms of the cave to reach forwards. So it's exactly what we do if we're yielding. You know, when you turn the waist and you open up, there's a real sense that you're producing a cave for the other person's energy to come into. Yeah. So it's the same thing here. It's not just a stuck, frozen posture. The cave is like it's slowly increasing in size and depth. So it's sort of, because it's always moving, it's sort of hovering. It's got this feeling of, ooh. So even though it's stable in relation to the ground, because I'm connecting through my root, there's still that sense that I could topple backwards. Again, just using the feet on the ground, scooping in, gathering energy up the insides of the legs. And then just coming forward, so off the heels, onto the toes and the balls of the feet. And just trying to keep the sacrum heavy. So the sacrum is hanging through this wobbly balance. The more it wobbles, the better. It just means that you're relaxing into the equilibrium rather than trying to hold it fast. And then just rocking back, one heel down first, and then the other. And feel that the heels reach backwards and then scoop under the ground. And that brings you back into Min-Meng, pressing back, and a sense of falling backwards that has to be balanced by your mind reaching forwards. Yeah, so in a way, central equilibrium is the most difficult thing, really, because as soon as there's this seeming stillness, the mind will tend to wander. The mind is always looking for entertainment, yeah? So it's roaming, it's voracious, it's hungry, it's greedy. So we just want to be able to just settle in the middle, but the middle is not, it's not still, it's really vibrating. Yeah. So it requires constant attention because it's always disequilibrating. So we're always having to bring it back. This is the thing about a dynamic equilibrium. It's never really in equilibrium. It's just, ooh, it's oscillating. And then just bringing it forwards again. Just lifting the heels up. And just feel how you become a different creature. Suddenly you're of spirit. So you become spiky rather than round. Keep the belly pulling in, like the belly flat. And just feel that just relaxing the lower back. So that's difficult. And then just relaxing back with the heels. So just feel the cave. So it's a cave like this, but it's also a cave like this. So if this is like hollow chest, and this is more like hollow belly. And just try your best to keep all around the sacrum relaxed. Because we want it to be sort of poised, delicately balanced. It's like, for me, it's like the best image is dowsing. You know, when you're dowsing for water, yeah? And they have those two, like biro cases, and they just have two bent wires in. So the wires are really can easily swing either side, and then they're just wandering. And if the wires pull in, it just means there's water. There's like a water course underneath the ground. And so really the wires are they just amplify the natural sensitivity of the body. But it only works if there's real independence between the two sides of your body. If you're locked in with an ego or with fear or tension, then it just won't really work, yeah, because it won't have this sort of leeway. So it's a bit like the pulling, the pushing of the stick, yeah. So that's what we want to just try and feel now. It's just the feet, you know, they're sort of working the ground. They can sort of push apart, they can pull together. And in particular, they can produce turning. So there's always this turning from side to side, even if it's tiny, even if no one would notice it. It's just so important. And again, we want it to come from the 2 feet playing with each other, not from me saying, okay, I've got to turn, and then producing this turn with my mind. I'm just allowing the feet to play, yeah? And it can produce a turn, it can produce a wobble, yeah? And we just let that happen. So try not to control it too much, because you'll just freeze out the good stuff as well as the bad stuff, yeah? And so the feet are just, it's like the feet are alive and they're sort of wriggling and writhing on the ground a little bit. And that's just producing something in the body. So just get the feet working. So one is clenching. So same as the hands, yeah? One is clenching and one is opening, but very light. Yeah, so the problem is, we have to really become expert at producing local tension. Yeah. So I can produce tension in this foot and this hand without it locking me up here. So I want to feel it as a turn, not just as a movement backwards and forwards of the two sides, which ostensibly it is. So it's really like this. It's like a chuff chuff train. Yeah. But I want to feel it as this turning. And now let's just make it a bit bigger and just feel. So just feel these two currents. They're like two currents in a river that are passing each other. Yeah. So when that happens, for whatever reason, normally because there's some obstruction that's sending the water backwards. Yeah? So you'll get like a whirlpool. So my body, my spine is the center of the whirlpool, and this water is swirling around from both feet. Yeah, so it's the same swirl. It's just it's coming from here and around the back. Here it's coming from here around the front and then around the back. So again, it just requires me to really push into the outside edges. And then I just relax that, and it's like the river just slows down and becomes still. And then I can produce the two currents again. So this foot is pushing that way, and this foot is pushing that way. And I become this spiral, this whirling vortex. And again, I think a lot of the secret is just the front foot. So this is basically now a front foot because I've turned to this right corner. So what we don't want to do is just if we have the foot just pointing out in the direction that I'm facing, then I lose the outside edge really. And I lose the energy that's coming up. So what I want is to keep that angled in here and really drive into that outside edge so that I get this scooping action coming up. So it's like there's quite a lot of tension because it's always wanting to just relax and unravel. And now just produce the cave. Yeah. And now just using the two legs, I'm pushing the two legs like that, and it produces a turn. Again, I'm pushing into the outside edges, which is tending to gather. And just relax into the swirling. Just really feel. If you can't feel it, and just imagine it. Just imagine you've got this sort of you're this whirlpool. And then just the water's just still. And now we can get into the cave, into the back receding, the arms having to reach forwards to keep a balance. And now just feel the feet, feel those two outside edges and just press them into the ground. And that produces this vortex. Just release it. And then just one more this side. Wow. And then just release it. And then just back to the cave. And now let's just come onto the front of the foot again. Yeah, so it doesn't matter how charged and intense this gets, it just lacks something of the turn, the intensity that comes in when you get this whirling. Yeah. So now let's just do this exercise. So the first warm-up exercise. But just feel it as the action of the 2 feet on the ground rather than me saying, okay, I'm going to do this exercise. Yeah. So my feet are basically pushing me into this. And then they pull to get you back here, and then they push into this. So I just want to feel the 2 feet working together. And if they are properly working together, they won't allow the other one to impose too much. Yeah. So the feet are working, but at the same time, they're sort of wriggling free of the constraints of the other one. Yeah. So there's a sense that something in me just, it's getting really irascible because it's rousing something in me. So this is what we want in the Tai Chi, that the doing of it wakes up like a deep spirit, like a monster inside you that just wants to break free of the form. So the form is like a constraint, but it's also a stimulus to spirit. That constraint is actually stimulating the spirit to fight against it. Yeah, so John used to talk a lot about, internal and external. Yeah. So the internal, if you like, is the content, and the external is like the form. So what we want to make sure is that, when we do the Tai Chi, it has content. Yeah. There's energy in there that's just really trying to express. It's not just me producing a form. Because if that's the case, the only thing you can guarantee is that your mind is probably thinking about something else. You're going through the motions. There should be no possibility of your mind wandering, because what you're doing just requires the absolute presence of mind, because it's all to do with intention. Not just mind, but spirit as well. A mind directed by spirit. So, yeah, so I once asked John, we used to talk about spirit all the time. I just said to him, what is spirit? How do you feel it? What does it feel like? Yeah. And he just said, it just feels like you're angry all the time. Yeah. So it's like something in you but you're not angry with anyone in particular. If anything, you're just angry with your own stupidity, your own ego, your own laziness. Yeah. So it's just incredibly active. Yeah. So everything wants to just sort of so you want to crumble into a really fine working machine, instead of what John would call a sack of potatoes. Yeah. So when he'd see someone going through the motions with their Tai Chi, he'd call it sack of potatoes Tai Chi. Yeah. So they've got all the parts. So they've got the sack and they've got all the potatoes inside it, but those potatoes should all be moving and like molecules. Yeah. Not all be just sitting there next to each other, waiting to be peeled. And now let's just bring it into this. So this is pretty much exactly the same. If anything, you can just feel the turning more purely, because you're having to really separate the turning from the movement of the body. So now your spine is moving as far from side to side as it can. On the previous one, we're trying to keep the spine in the middle and just turn around it. So here I can separate those two movements. I'm turning around the spine and the spine is moving, and they're quite different. So just feel the sinking. There's a real heaviness inside you that just wants to get into the ground. So now let's just bring it to riding horse again. Again, this feeling that you're falling backwards at the same time that you're having to reach forwards. And just feel the completely different parts of you. So the part that's falling backwards is your body and your sort of relaxing, slow mind. And the part that's reaching forwards is your spirit and your lively mind. So it's much better with someone. You know, if you're doing this with another person, you just hold hands and you'd both lean back. And you just feel it, you know, you're relaxing backwards, but at the same time, you're reaching forwards and just really feeling their connection with the ground, because of course your safety relies upon that. And it's just natural. You just naturally, the mind just naturally goes there. So now we just have to imagine it. Okay, so let's just bring it up now. And just feel that as something in the belly contracts, and that brings you up. And just feel the feet. So it's like you're, again, the heels or the outside edges and the outside edges are sort of straightening you up at the same time that you're actually trying to bend the legs to come down. And if you're bending the legs to come down, but you're not actually moving down, then that bending is actually sucking from the ground. So just keep the mind on a tight leash. You know, when you take the dog to the park and then you let it off the leash and it just goes mad for a few moments, zooming around. And that's basically what the mind is like. The mind is like it's just out of control. We've just lost the ability to just control the mind. So we want to just be able to just bring it in and just lock it down here. And the only way you learn that is by meditation. And so John used to talk about external and internal. Yeah. So they also talk about exoteric and esoteric. Yeah. So in terms of a teaching, there's an exoteric part, which is like the external part that anyone can understand. So like doing the form the way it was taught, put your foot here, put your arm here. Yeah. And then the esoteric part is that bit, right, that you have to really work hard for to get any access to. It can't be taught you by the teacher. The teacher can wake up your spirit, but it's still you that has to use that spirit to actually wake up that esoteric part. And basically, as like Nietzsche said, not everyone is suited, but not only is not everyone suited, but most people are not qualified. Yeah. Because what you need, something needs to have happened in your life to wake up a deep suspicion of the world as it's been presented to you. So either you need to have had some trauma that has just thrust you into some awfulness of experience, yeah, like soldiers, yeah, when they get that PTSD, you know, really what they've just been shown that the world of spirit is like a real intensity that our bourgeois domesticated lives just cannot compete with, yeah. It's like that beautiful movie, They Shall Not Grow Old, about the First World War. And, you know, so when I grew up, you know, I had a lot of friends that their dads would have fought in the Second World War and their granddads in the First World War. And the consensus is that they never spoke about it. It was so awful that they couldn't talk about it. They couldn't go there. But what became clear from that movie, from hearing the old codgers talking about their experiences in the trenches, was that they really missed it. They missed the intensity and just the comradeship, you know, when everyone's spirit is brought up to a real intensity, then you just bond and you bind, yeah. In a sense, that's what I miss about the Tai Chi Center, you know, the time with John. I mean, it was difficult, but everything else pales, yeah. So here, you know, most of the time, I'm just bored rigid because there's part of me that just wants to just wake up and engage in that spirited way, but no one wants to, yeah. No one wants to take the plunge or take the risk, take the leap of faith. They just feel this is just all the time in the background. It's just, it doesn't need to be attention. It's not as though you need to tighten the muscles here. It's just the mind is just moving in. The mind is moving into the Dantian all the time. Because if it stops moving in, it will come out. Yeah. And it's a difficult place to be. You know, this is why the mind wanders. The mind doesn't like being inside. It just wants entertainment. Yeah. It's puerile. It's childish. So we're just trying to grow up, really. And for that, you just need to just anchor the Dantian, anchor the mind in the Dantian. And then you just look at the world dispassionately, yeah. You just see things, yeah. But you don't get involved.